very, very clear forward look. Moldova is determined to achieve the goal to become a full and revived member of the European Union. You need a good road network. You need a good railway system. You need access to ports, functioning airport, right? It's not going to be easy. It will be difficult, but that can be done. And I think we, as well as other development partners, are absolutely committed to stand by Moldova on this journey.
What is World Bank?
Major development partner in Moldova.
Why does the World Bank have a partnership with Republic of Moldova?
Because we strongly believe in Moldova's development.
3 things that would attract investments in the economy of the Republic of Moldova.
Favorable and stable business environment, infrastructure development, skilled workforce.
3 economic areas of perspective.
Agriculture. Look, not many countries have better agriculture products that Moldova has.
3 main problems to eliminate for a better business environment.
Corruption, bureaucracy, how Moldova can achieve the European living standard within a generation.
It has been 22 years of independence of Republic of Moldova and over 30 years of partnership with the World Bank. First of all, I would like to ask you to reflect on these 3 decades and offer a vision. What do you think about Moldova's achievements and failures in these years? And how has World Bank support helped?
Let me just start with saying that these 30 years have not been easy for many countries in the region because there was this very significant transitioning happening, including in Moldova, from planned economy to market economy to democracy to established democratic society. That's a very significant change. But Moldova, in addition, had other changes and other difficulties as well. The war on the Dniester River. Therefore, those are the things that make this transition more difficult. And I would like to say that Moldova has done a lot and achieved a lot. And we look at some of the indicators that we in the bank are looking at, for example, reduction of poverty. And when we look at Moldova from the year 2000 to year 2015, Moldova was among the few countries, among the top 3 countries in Europe and Central Asia region that managed to get away with extreme poverty. And not many countries have been able to do that. There is also a lot of progress being made towards EU integration. The association agreement in 2014, then visa regime changed for all Moldovans. And last year, I think we all learned about very good news for Moldova, that Moldova was accepted as a EU candidate country. Therefore, these are really good achievements. But it's also clear that a lot needs to be done. A lot needs to be done. There are reforms that need to be taken. There are reforms that might not be as fast as we would like to see, but for us, working together with the Republic of Moldova has been an incredible journey. I think we have provided very significant amount of financial support. When I look back at 30 years, our financial support was over $1.5 billion US. We have had over 70 operations. That's quite significant. And without a doubt, I think this is something that we look forward to continue. And it's not only financial support, it's policy advice, it's knowledge support. And at this point, I think 30 years looking back, I'm very clear that we're looking for a very good collaboration for the years to come.
Let's talk about future. What do the partnership plans for the next 5 years look like? What will be the focus?
We're very glad that we have a 5-year strategy that was endorsed by the World Bank Board in March this year. And that is what will determine how we cooperate with the Republic of Moldova for the coming 5 years. I would also like to say that this is a very clear commitment from our side that we are fully supportive of the reform path that Moldova has taken. This new partnership framework, we call it country partnership framework, it's for years 2023 to 2027, is also very closely aligned with Moldova's national development strategy, European Moldova 2030. And what I would like to say that the circumstances when we prepared this joint partnership framework were a bit different than in other countries or in other situations. And I think we all know that the war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, changed Europe, changed the world, and absolutely has a huge impact on Moldova when the war is right next door. Therefore, the 5-year strategy, we first of all looked at it to address and help Moldova to address immediate needs. That's when we saw the refugee influx from that it was very clear that significant financial support will be needed to the country. And that's why what we were doing, we really allocated financial resources in the first year to address those immediate challenges. But at the same time, the 5-year strategy is looking at both immediate challenges, but also at the longer term needs and reforms that Moldova has to continue to make sure that the path toward the European Union is smoother, easier, and hopefully faster. Therefore, this 5-year strategy is really, it programs only first 2 years. Therefore, we wanted it to be flexible, that when the situation changes, we could adjust the strategy. And that's how it has been structured. But overall, it will look at the higher level outcomes. We would like to support creating more formal jobs. We would like to continue investing in building human capital and strengthening human capital. And we would like to also help creating green and resilient investments. That is the overall outcomes that we would like to see. How can we work together?
Next question. The World Bank says the speed of reforms in the recent year could have been faster. For example, in the area of justice, business environment, or restructuring the state-owned enterprises. Do you see effort in Chișinău to improve these 3 areas?
Oh, yes, absolutely. But let me start with saying that there has been a lot of reform efforts that have taken place. But the reforms, the ones you mentioned, reform of justice sector, state-owned enterprises, have been slow and sometimes lagging in implementation. I have to say that frequent government changes, that we have seen, adds to the difficulty because you can see changing priorities. You can see that sometimes there is no continuity, and that always slows down the reform. However good is the reform, when you see these things, you find that implementation of the reform is slower and more difficult, or even reversed. And we have seen that as well in Moldova. Therefore, I think what we are currently seeing is really a determination to go through with these reforms. But you're right, and you mentioned a few, but there are many more, that Moldova needs to embark on. And I think that's why it's so difficult. When you have to look at the immediate needs and address those, and a lot of effort is being put into addressing those needs, like refugee crisis. Those are immediate needs, energy crisis. And at the same time, you need to think about these longer term reforms. Sometimes you can get the focus or the balance not the right. But I think what Moldova has done, I think they have found this balance, because when we were working in our country partnership framework, it was very clear message from the government. They would like to continue with longer term development reforms. And I think that's a very good signal for us, because then we know that whatever we put forward through our policy dialogue, whatever reform proposals we have, we are convinced that they will be followed through. Maybe not as fast, because I think what we also see, the capacity sometimes is something that slows down reform implementation, and we are struggling that in our portfolio, and the government is struggling with that. But at the same time, what we have seen, I think, and also we have seen through our project, like for example, creating better business environment, right? We're talking a lot about that. We have a project for support to small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises. And that has been a long engagement, 10 years. Just one example, there's a lot of digitization efforts going on. And, through the first operation, we managed to digitize 87 permits and licenses at the national level. The project that we just recently approved last year will continue this work. But again, it doesn't happen overnight. Therefore, I think these things, and you mentioned justice reform, it's very important, but that will be a long-term reform. But again, I think we definitely are looking forward to working together on those reforms and supporting in whatever area we have our engagements. We'll look forward to supporting those reforms.
The Republic of Moldova received the status of a candidate for EU accession. You mentioned this aspect, but it is unfortunate geopolitical and economic moment, the war in Ukraine. My question is, how does the World Bank get involved in supporting the Republic of Moldova in finding the consequences of the war, and at the same time preparing for accessions?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there is this dual focus, and we have it also in our partnership framework, because Moldova is in a difficult situation, because you can't just say, look, we'll just do this one and wait for the other one. No, it has to be balanced, and both the immediate needs and the longer term needs, including EU accession, should be addressed at the same time. And I think what we are seeing is that, it has been handled quite well. And I think Moldova impressed the whole world with that after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a huge amount of refugees, more per capita than any other country, flew into Moldova. And the way Moldovans, families, households accepted that, it was remarkable. But that was also a very costly exercise. Therefore, it was not, Moldova, with Moldova's income per capita, is not a rich country that could easily take on or either help with transportations to other EU countries. That required a lot of financial resources. And I think that's when we stepped in with budget support operation. And there was a series of budget support operations. The one was developed very, very quickly. It was right after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when we provided 100 million budget support to the government to exactly compensate for the amounts that the government has spent from their own budget. Therefore, that was how we deal with the immediate needs. And we continue doing that, because there was also energy crisis that all required significant fiscal resources. But going forward, and then we start talking about this longer term agenda and towards EU accession and EU path. And what we also try to build into our partnership framework is that every either lending operation or analytical work that we are doing will kind of try to look through the lens of the EU accession process. Let me just give you an example. recently our board approved the agriculture growth project, growth governance and investment project. And it was very clear message from the government that they would like to see how can this project help to build institutions that will be needed for the EU already. And that is the payment agency that Moldova had. But what we'll be helping, we will strengthen this payment agency that provides payments to agriculture, to farmers, because this agency is essential in the EU. When you are acceding to the EU or EU country, there will be more financing coming from the EU, but you need a strong, transparent, reliable payment agency. And it's just one example. But the same thing we'll try to do through our new energy efficiency project, trying to see how these activities in those projects are aligned with the EU path.
Speaking about economy, the economic contraction in 2022 will be followed, according to the World Bank, by modest growth in the current year, possibly only 1.8%. It will be the smallest growth in the region. What does the World Bank recommend in such a situation? What would be the decisive things that need to be done?
Yeah, it is small, but it is positive. I try to look from that aspect, and when we look at the negative growth that we had in Moldova had in 2022, I think this is still, it's encouraging that the growth will be positive. Yes, I agree, it is small, but we also have to realize that Moldova was very hard hit by a number of shocks in the several years, probably more than any other countries. It was starting with COVID-19 pandemic, then droughts, then energy crisis, and again Moldova was very vulnerable because it depended on only one energy source. And then Russia's invasion. Therefore, when you kind of put these risks and compound them, you just can imagine how hard economy was hit. Therefore, recovering from that, in fact, Moldova started to recover after COVID-19 pandemic, and then these other shocks came in. Therefore, it has been a very, very challenging period. But I think there are again a number of things that could be done. I think Moldova needs to realize that there will be a lot of uncertainties. And I think that is one thing, probably to plan for those uncertainties. I think this is something, because we don't know how the war next door will continue, for how long. Therefore, these are all the factors that need to be planned for. I also think that what is being done, it will be very important, is to prepare for the next winter season. I think we were lucky with the previous one. It was warm, but we don't know what the next one will be. And the government is doing the right thing by really looking at what fiscal space they have to make sure that households and businesses can live through the next heating season and preparing for that. I think that is something what is in the immediate term essential. At the same time, I think is very important not to lose this focus on the longer term agenda. Looking at how can businesses looking at making red tape less present, making sure that businesses can come in. Because again, for businesses to come in, or for domestic businesses with uncertainties, again, because of the war, is a pretty risky thing. Therefore, how is there a way to reduce those risks now, but also in the medium term? Therefore, those are, I think, some of the things that, again, a number of things can be done already. There is a huge infrastructure gap, and what we are seeing now, that when the country needs to look at how to reorient its export from east to the west, you need a good road network. You need a good railway system. You need access to ports, airport, functioning airport, right? There are all the things that can be looked at now. Yes, they require investments, but there is, I think, a very clear commitment from development community to help Moldova with the investment, to address its investment needs. Therefore, I think this is, again, the basis for the future growth needs to start building now.
The World Bank always advises the government to increase the efficiency of public spending. Now, after Russia invaded Ukraine and this has given a boost of inflation, money is more expensive. So what advice can you give to the government to focus on budget, make sure it has enough revenue to collect and spend wisely? Or is that not possible when you have to mitigate the fall in purchasing power?
I would always say everything is possible. I think that would be the very short answer. Again, it might not be easy, but what we have seen through our analysis, through our country economic memorandum analysis, is that there are ways to again, to balance these short-term needs, and it's very clear. And the government has put in place very good and strong instruments to support immediate needs, to support households, energy vulnerability fund. That will continue. And those are, again, those are costly measures. Those are not cheap. But at the same time, I think there are ways to see whether, maybe not immediately, but in a medium term, look for more efficient use of budget resources. Let me just give you few pro examples. I think this flexibility that the government had they need to retain it. It was because, again, as I mentioned, uncertainties, and we don't know what the next heating season, what the next winter will bring. Therefore, I think the government should retain that flexibility to allocate maybe more resources than they planned. But at the same time, it might make sense to look at the spending, some of the expenditures. For example, looking at procurement system, how efficient it is, especially goods and services. Looking at investments, how quickly those investments are actually materializing, because the longer you wait for the investment to materialize, the more costly it is. Because if you plan your road to be built in let's say a year, but it takes 2 years, that requires human resources, additional, that requires extra financial resources. For that is more costly. Therefore, looking at those things, I think, is clearly an option. I also think that, advancing parallel reforms is a possibility. We have looked at rationalizing some of the most expensive service sectors, education, health. Those take a lot of budgetary resources, but there is an opportunity to start looking at how, for example, the network of schools, network of hospitals could be rationalized. Again, this will not bring savings immediately, but again, the longer we wait for start looking at these things, the more costly it will be. And again, domestic revenue mobilization, it's a long-term issue. I think there was a report that looked at the taxation. But at this point, I would like to say that this is something to look and see how both personal income tax or corporate income tax systems can be adjusted to make sure that it's easier, more transparent, and basically brings in a willingness to pay those taxes, because that's also an issue. But for that, you need a transparent, easy administrable system, and clear for everybody both for the government, but also for those who pay those taxes. I understand that there are quite, both on personal income tax side and corporate income tax side, there are a lot of exemptions. There are a lot of different variations. Therefore, I think that's something to look at, whether this could be, and that probably could be done easier than some of other longer term reforms.
Before the end, I would like to know how you describe the state of the Moldovan economy and what gives you hope, maybe.
Therefore, I think that as I mentioned, this very, very clear forward look. Moldova is determined to achieve the goal to become a full and revived member of the European Union. And I think that is helpful, but it also gives a lot of clarity and for us to make sure that we know that we are needed and we can work with the country. And also our country economic memorandum, I think, which is called how Moldova can achieve the European living standard within a generation. And the country economic memorandum concludes that, yes, it is possible. It's not going to be easy. It will be difficult, but that can be done. And I think we, as well as other development partners, are absolutely committed to stand by Moldova on this journey.
It looked like a message for Moldovan for Independence Day, or maybe you have another message.
Yes, the 27th of August, Moldova's Independence Day. I would only repeat the message. I think that it is very good to see that there is a clear determination for Moldova to get and finalize the path to be a full-fledged, reliable member of the European Union. And I would like to wish the luck, and again, as I said, we stand ready to support Moldova in this journey.
At the end, Mrs. Inguna, I have a list of short questions for you. What is World Bank?
The World Bank is an international development organization. It has 189 members. It's like a cooperative. We have a board of 24 board directors. And the World Bank provides assistance in terms of financial products, policy advice, knowledge products to the countries that are developing. And we are a major development partner in Moldova.
Why does the World Bank have a partnership with Republic of Moldova?
Because we strongly believe in Moldova's development, and we feel that Moldova trusts us as a development partner.
Does the World Bank specifically offer grants or loans?
The World Bank to Moldova, the World Bank offers loans. And it's a different type of loans. It could be for investment, it could be for budget support. And it is that I think we can also be very flexible in mobilizing different type of lending when the country is in need.
Under what condition our World Bank loans offered?
The loans that we are offering have flexible. It's called flexible loan. That means that it's a long-term lending. It's 35 years maturity. The lending terms depend on what currency country wants to borrow, but those are flexible and they are offered on the still concessional terms, because the World Bank has AAA rating and can borrow in financial markets on very good terms. That allows us to extend on the good preferential terms lending to countries. It is also, it's a country's choice, I have to say, because depending on country's debt management, the country chooses how long the loan should be, what terms it should be, and what currency to borrow.
Three things that would attract investments in the economy of the Republic of Moldova.
Favorable and stable business environment, infrastructure development, and skilled workforce.
3 obstacles to clear their way?
It's probably, again, those will be the 3. I think continuing reforms to making sure that the business environment is more favorable, and both for domestic and for foreign investment. I think cutting red tape, reducing the number of licenses that are needed. Infrastructure, continue building roads, making sure that energy infrastructure is stable and reliable, because that's what businesses are looking for, right? But that's also very important for Moldova to increase its export to the Western countries. And human capital development, I think, is investing in people will be very important. We all know about outmigration, and investing in human capital will be essential. Try to keep Moldovans in Moldova, but also maybe at some point bring people back.
3 economic areas of perspective.
Agriculture. Look, not many countries have better agriculture products that Moldova has. Looking at the fruits and vegetables and many others. And I think the evidence of that is that recently, Moldova was able to access EU markets with its poultry and dairy products. Therefore, I think agriculture will remain something that needs to be invested and needs to be developed. Information technology and services. We see very nice efforts to strengthen this industry, and it's the fastest growing industry. Therefore, that I think has a huge potential to provide the required growth to Moldovan economy. And tourism and hospitality. When you travel around Moldova, there is a wine industry is developing, but I think this requires more investment to make sure that it is combined with nature tourism, ecotourism activities for children and families. Therefore, but that is definitely an area to continue.
3 main problems to eliminate for a better business environment.
Corruption, bureaucracy. I think we talked about red tape. I think those are very closely linked both. I think that is important, and just the system to make sure that businesses can rely on it. And I think it's also limited access to finance. We are talking, as a national bank, I think, but the financial sector is stable, but access to finance, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, is not that easy. Agriculture, access finance to finance. Therefore, those are the things that need to be looked carefully, and that I think would really help Moldovan economy to develop.
This podcast is called Making Money Make Sense. If I ask you what it means to you to give meaning to money, what would you say?
Investment, but productive investment. The investment should be productive. Then the money is wisely used.
Thank you.
Thank you.